On April 22, 1945, Adolf Hitler, learning from one of his generals that no German defense was offered to the Russian assault at Eberswalde, admits to all in his underground bunker that the war is lost and that suicide is his only recourse. Hello to all the viewers who have returned to our program. Don't forget to hit like to support our channel. And now we will begin today's story. Throughout his life, Adolf Hitler had never been able to admit a single mistake or accept responsibility for any failure. And as the 1,000-year Reich he founded teetered on the brink of collapse in early 1945, he blamed it on the weakness of the German people and a military organization riddled with timid, disloyal, and incompetent officers. If only they had really listened to him and let themselves be inspired. If only they had possessed the same will and determination as him. Certainly, everything would have turned out differently. As they roared into Germany, Russian soldiers unleashed their pent-up fury upon German soldiers and civilians alike, exacting a revenge without limits upon Hitler's people for all that the Nazis had done in Russia. One such town caught up in the maelstrom was Demmin in northeastern Germany, where women tried to stave off Russian sexual assaults. Waltraud Reschke, a schoolgirl at the time, recalled, "The women were disguised, but you can tell if a woman has a good figure, and they found my mother again and again and treated her terribly. You can't imagine what it was like for her to be raped 10 or 20 times a day. You're hardly human anymore. My mother became an entirely different person for the rest of her life." News of the rapes, random murders, and out-of-control plundering quickly spread, causing German civilians to become hysterical as the Red Army approached their locale. Whole families committed suicide rather than allow themselves to be subjected to Russian rule. At Demmin alone, some 900 persons killed themselves upon the Russian occupation, mainly by plunging into the nearby river and drowning along with their children. The growing problem of desertion was addressed. The hopelessness of the overall military situation tempted many a German soldier in the West to surrender to the Americans, considered less hostile than the British, whose cities the Germans had been bombing for 5 years. To counter this trend, drastic orders were issued by the High Command in the name of the Führer, decreeing the punishment of death for anyone traveling on unauthorized leave, or anyone claiming to be lost or separated from their unit. Roving squads of Himmler's SS men also patrolled rear areas looking for stragglers. They were summarily shot, or in some cases, hanged from a nearby lamppost, left there as a warning with a hand-lettered sign pinned on them saying, "I deserted." Himmler also made it known the SS would track down and shoot the entire family of any deserter. Such drastic measures could not forestall the military outcome, however. And as his troops withered in the face of the awesome might of the Russian, American, and British-Canadian armies, Hitler scraped together new units composed of old men and young boys to save what remained of Nazi Germany. Universities, high schools, and even grade schools were emptied as all able-bodied males were grabbed for service in the Volkssturm, the People's Home Guard. In Berlin and elsewhere, elderly World War I veterans now marched off to the east alongside junior Hitler youth boys to fend off battle-hardened Russians, outnumbering them 20-1. Armed only with rifles and anti-tank grenade launchers, they would lose their lives, blown to bits while serving as human barricades, accomplishing nothing other than to buy a little more time for their Führer. In the east, Zhukov's troops were massing for their final attack on Berlin, a city already 90% destroyed by the continuing 1,000-bomber air raids. Among the bombing victims was People's Court Judge Roland Freisler, killed by a direct hit. Also hit again was the Reich Chancellery building, which had been serving as Hitler's military headquarters. By this time, Hitler had abandoned it for the safety of an underground bunker complex 50 feet below the adjacent garden. Regardless, even at this late stage, Hitler insisted there was still good reason to fight on, despite the heavy cost in German lives. He now believed the Western democracies, America and Britain, would soon see the light and join with Nazi Germany to fight the Russians in order to prevent Stalin from expanding the Soviet Union, and thereby communism, into Europe. Therefore, the Führer had convinced himself the solution to Germany's dire predicament would be a political one after all, if his troops could just hold out. In reality, the Allies had seen the light already, and it only concerned the magnitude of Nazi barbarism and its tragic human toll. This became apparent when American, British, and Russian soldiers liberated concentration camps and saw gas chambers, ovens, piles of ashes, and stacks of dead bodies along with starved survivors who looked like walking corpses. A further hope those in the bunker clutched onto as everything fell apart was astrology. Encouraged by his propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels, the Führer requested to see the 2 horoscopes that Himmler, who dabbled deeply in such things, had stored away for him. And according to the star charts, Hitler would experience victory through 1941, then a series of setbacks through the first half of April 1945, when something great would happen to bring him unexpected success. Coincidentally, on Thursday, April 12, 1945, President Franklin Roosevelt fell ill and died from a cerebral hemorrhage while visiting Warm Springs, Georgia. Upon hearing the news, Goebbels telephoned Hitler and congratulated him. This had to be the turning point. Without Roosevelt, the delicate British-American-Russian alliance would surely disintegrate. After this, the less hostile Harry Truman would be open to the possibility of talks with Nazi Germany. But nothing happened. President Truman continued all of Roosevelt's war policies and alliances. When this became apparent, Hitler's elation over Roosevelt's death evaporated, followed by the darkest mood of his life as he listened to the worst ever military reports. By now, all of his armies in the Ruhr industrial area had collapsed upon the capture of 325,000 men, following their encirclement by the American 1st and 9th Armies. Berlin itself was now endangered. American advance units were about 50 miles west of the city, while the Russians were already on the outskirts. In response to it all, Hitler issued frantic orders to reposition armies that were either already wiped out or presently surrounded. And as his orders went unheeded, the Führer became increasingly enraged. Everything came to head on Sunday, April 22nd. During a 3-hour military conference in the Führer bunker, Hitler let loose a shrieking denunciation of the German army and the universal treason, corruption, lies, and failures of all those who had let him down. "The war is lost," shouted the exasperated Führer. The Third Reich was a failure, and he said there was nothing left for him to do but stay in Berlin and die. Thank you for listening. Please let me know your thoughts on this story, and don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it.